excited to welcome our host today, Meryl Davids Landau, award-winning journalist and author. She's going to talk about how and why we can incorporate mindfulness more into our daily life. I'm personally very excited to know more about this. So I'm going to stop my share and hand it on over to Meryl. Meryl, thank you so much for being here today. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. So my name is Meryl Davids Landau, as Sarah mentioned. I am a longtime journalist, a novelist, which I'll talk about in a minute. I'm also a longtime yoga practitioner, and I've been practicing mindfulness and incorporating bits of it into my daily life for many years. And that's really what we're going to be talking about here. Not so much any kind of formal practice that anybody has to do, at a certain time of the day or any kind of weird things, but just really about how to focus your mind in a way that makes your life much more beneficial. So these are just to give you a little sense. I'm going to just share some of the publications that I've written for over the years. Most of the women's magazines, which you see here, I've written for the New York Times and National Geographic and many other publications. And I've often written about yoga, meditation, and mindfulness, and those are three different things, which we'll talk about in a minute. I also have written two novels. Downward Dog, Upward Fog was my first novel, and that is about a woman who has a regular life and has a mom who's a little difficult, has work issues, relationship issues, and how she uses mindfulness in kind of a practical and fun way. And both of my books are really beach reads, so they're kind of lighthearted, even though they deal with the serious topic of mindfulness. And in Warrior One, which won a prestigious publishing award, is about a woman who finds out while she's pregnant that there might be something wrong with her unborn baby. And since that's not something that can be discerned immediately, the question really becomes, how do you keep your inner peace during all of the months that you're waiting and testing and trying to figure out what's happening in your life? So I want to start by talking about mindfulness. We often we often think, is mindfulness meditation? Are they the same things? Or what exactly does mindfulness mean? And mindfulness really just means bringing your thoughts to what's happening in your present moment. So most of us spend a lot of our time, whether we're really conscious of it or not, we spend a lot of our time thinking about what we're planning, what's going to happen in the future. What do we need to stop at the store to buy? Who's coming over to visit? Or we think about things that happened in the past, whether they were good things or things that we're upset about, but they happened in the past, so we can't really change them at this point. And by doing that, we miss out on the experience of what's happening in the present. So we might be somewhere, we might even be halfway paying attention to something, but we're not really fully enjoying and engaging in what's happening. And all of us, even if we do that, a lot of the time, which a lot of us do a lot of the time, we all know and have had experiences of being really, truly mindful in things. I mean, think about a time when you were playing with a young child, whether your kids when they were younger, whether it's grandchildren, whether it's just, children that when you're playing with them, like it can really bring you into the present moment. When you're holding a baby, when you're petting a cat, when you're out in nature and seeing, a beautiful sunset or a gorgeous beach, like that, we're really present in those moments. We're not tending to think about like, what do we need to put on our grocery list in those kinds of moments. And it's that kind of focus that we can really train ourselves to do and bring to more of the moments in our lives. And so that's really what mindfulness is. When you become aware of what's going on around you, and that includes your thoughts, your feelings, your sensations, how things are feeling, and the environment around you, but you're aware in a way that's gentle and curious. You bring a lot of kindness to the practice. So there's no anger at yourself. Oh, there I was, not being mindful or not being in the moment. You really want to try to be sweet with yourself when you notice that you're not doing that. So there's a famous mindfulness practitioner. His name is John Kabat-Zinn. He's written quite a number of books, and he actually created the mindfulness stress reduction program that's offered at a lot of hospitals for people who are dealing with heart disease and other conditions, to really try to bring mindfulness-based stress reduction. It's called MBSR. And his definition of mindfulness is awareness that arises through paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, in the service of self-understanding and wisdom. So I just want to break that down for a minute. Awareness that arises through paying attention. So that's what we talked about before in terms of mindfulness is bringing your attention to something on purpose. So it's a practice that we're trying to cultivate, we're trying to do, just like exercise, just like other things that you might try to do in your life. And sometimes you're going to be more successful than others. We do it on purpose. We do it in the present moment, because that's the idea, is to really focus on what's happening in the here and now. And we do it non-judgmentally. So again, as I was saying before, if you notice, oh man, I was trying to pay attention to this and I just realized, like, I haven't heard a word that this person I'm talking to said because my mind has been somewhere else, we say, okay, I'm going to be sweet with myself and just realize that that's something I want to be doing, and maybe I'm going to try a little better next time. So mindfulness does have its roots in Buddhism, but it's not a Buddhist practice. It's not something that you have to be any kind of religion or any kind of belief in anything in order to do. And it really has a lot of benefits for everybody. So I'm going to start by asking this question. Where is your attention now? Have you been multitasking while I've been talking so far? Have you been halfway paying attention? Have you been noticing your own, where you're sitting and how you're feeling, and being really fully present at this moment and at, in the past couple of minutes? And if you haven't, again, be gentle with yourself, but just let's try to practice mindfulness during the rest of this presentation. So if you've been, also, doing the crossword puzzle or doing something else, as well as trying to listen, see if you can just bring your attention fully here right now and practice mindfulness during the rest of this talk. So I thought this was interesting when I first stumbled upon this. This is a quote from the National Institutes of Health in their newsletter, News and Health. And they had a whole article on mindfulness. Studies suggest that focusing on the present can have a positive impact on health and well-being. So this is not like, random Indian researchers or, gurus saying this. This is the America's premier health research institution saying that mindfulness can have a positive impact on people's health and well-being. And in the article, they talked about all of the research that's gone on with mindfulness, that mindfulness-based treatments have been shown to reduce anxiety and depression. They can lower blood pressure. They improve sleep. These practices can help people cope with pain. So it may not make an injury go away, but it helps the person cope with pain better. People who practice mindfulness can lose weight because they're eating more mindfully, and it's that mindless eating that often is a problem for many of us. And there are ongoing studies looking into whether it could help with PTSD, with addiction, and with many other medical conditions. And I think that those are all important, but for me, it's not the most important. The most important reason to practice mindfulness and why I practice mindfulness is because it helps you enjoy your life better. When you're fully where you are, when you feel connected to the larger world around you, you're just in a better place. Your life goes better, your day goes better, you're happy, you experience much more happiness. And for people who have a sense of spirituality, when you practice mindfulness, you can also feel more connected to the greater world around you, which can enhance your sense of spirituality. So for me, those are some of the most important reasons, in addition to the health benefits. My personal mindful practice does involve a formal meditation, and we're going to just do a very brief formal meditation towards the end of this talk. But to me, that's not the most important part of practicing mindfulness. To me, the most important parts of practicing mindfulness are to try to bring it to different points throughout your day, so that, when you're doing things and you're using certain cues, which we'll describe in more detail, to help make you stop and say, am I paying attention? What am I doing what am I doing with my thoughts that maybe are not serving me right now? And so again, I'm going to ask you the question, where is your attention now? And if it hasn't been, and if it isn't currently on what you're seeing and hearing and how you're sitting and what's happening in your body, then maybe try to bring it back right now. Okay, so what mindfulness is not. Mindfulness is not weird or esoteric. There are many myths about mindfulness, and some of them are also, myths. Sarah and I were talking before. Some of them are also myths about the practice of yoga. People kind of fuse mindfulness, meditation, yoga, and they think people sit around with crystals and chant sounds and make weird noises and are strange people. And none of that is mindfulness. Some of the other myths that are pretty prevalent is that it conflicts with certain religions. You can have any religion or no religion and be a practitioner of mindfulness. That it requires a quiet space, or that you need to stop your thoughts. Those two things are very prevalent. People believe that's true. No one ever has a quiet space anywhere around them. Even if you live by yourself, there's probably garbage outside and people doing the lawn and everything. Your refrigerator is making noise. So no one ever really has that kind of level of silence. And fortunately, you do not need that level of silence anywhere in your life in order to practice mindfulness. And mindfulness is not about stopping your thoughts, which is also something that nobody can ever really do, because your mind is an idea factory. The thoughts are constantly going to be coming to you, and that's not a bad thing. The purpose of mindfulness is to be kind of the witness to those thoughts, to step back and to think about, what am I thinking? To see, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? Instead of just kind of having those thoughts and feelings overtake you. And that gives you the space to enter the much calmer place inside of you that isn't part of some of that swirl of thoughts and emotions. And the other myth about mindfulness is that it's easy to do. Some people think that mindfulness is a practice that they can adopt and get good at really immediately. And that's not really the case. And part of that's because of what I mentioned before, that your mind is constantly swirling with ideas, and it's easy to get sucked into those thoughts instead of separating yourself from them. So it does take practice. It does take a little discipline, a little bit like exercise in that way, right? The first time you pick up a couple of pound weights and try to exercise, it's not going to be that easy. But if you give up, then you lose the benefits. If you keep going and work through it and keep practicing, then you're going to be able to be a lot better at it. So there are a number of ways that you can enhance your mindfulness. And most of those involve putting a small amount of your focus on one specific thing. It's very interesting when you try to focus a little bit on something, it kind of enhances your awareness of everything. So again, we're not trying to shut off our minds. We're not trying to stop thinking about things. But if you put a small amount of your attention on any of these, not all of these, pick one, and you can pick different ones at different time of the day, or you can pick the one thing that you enjoy the most or that seems to work for you the most. But when you put part of your attention on some of these things, it really can help you become more mindful about everything. So one of the most common points of attention that people use is the breath. And what that means is just you're focusing a little piece of what's going on as you're listening to someone talk, as you're writing down a list, as you're watching television, whatever you're doing, you reading a book, you've put a little bit of your attention on your breath, and you just notice the breath coming into your nostrils. So feel it coming in and feel it going out. And you can do that at your regular tempo that you're breathing, or you could do it a little bit slower, whatever works for you. And it's just by putting a little bit of that awareness on that breath, it helps to calm the mind, and that helps you maintain your focus on everything that's happening in your present moment. Another thing that I like to do, that the mindfulness teacher Eckhart Tolle often recommends, is to focus on the energy moving inside your body. So if you notice right now in your feet or in your hands, if you just put a little bit of your awareness on that, you'll feel that there's energy moving inside of your foot or inside of your hand. And if you try to keep a little bit of your attention on that energy and really feel it as it's kind of swirling around in there, that again helps to bring your mind to a point of focus that makes you more mindful of everything else that's going on around you. Mindfulness is often and easily done when you're walking. If you just pay attention to each time your foot comes down on the ground, feeling your foot hit the ground. And of course, I'm talking about in your shoes, or if you're barefoot in your house, fine, but I'm not saying you have to be barefoot on grass, in order to walk mindfully. You can be walking anywhere, doing anything, and you're just feeling your foot as it strikes the floor. This is something all of us walk. Most of us walk many, many steps in a day and pay no attention to any time of the experience of walking. So this is a conscious practice of noticing your foot touching the ground. And when you do that, again, it just helps you to bring your awareness to everything that's happening in the moment. Similarly, there are sounds. I remember when my son was younger, we were in the supermarket, and all of a sudden he yelled, "Pick me up!" And he like almost jumped up into my arms. And I thought, like, what scared him? And then I realized somebody had, over the loudspeaker system in the supermarket, somebody had made an announcement about, something that broke or whatever needed to be cleaned. I didn't even hear it because I was not mindful of those sounds. Often we're walking out in nature, we don't hear the chirping of the birds. But even when we're walking anywhere outside or in our house, when we're just sitting, the refrigerator is always humming. The air conditioning or the heat might come on and off. I say air conditioning because I'm in South Florida, but I know you guys a lot of you are up north, so probably hearing the heat more than the air conditioning. But when it comes on, it makes noises. If you just consciously pay attention to those sounds, that's another way to bring mindfulness into the moment. And finally, one of my favorites is to focus on where your body meets outside objects. I call that the inner outer pause. And my character in the novel I'm currently working on, the third in the series with some of the same characters, she does this a lot. So for example, right now, if you're sitting, feel where your back and your butt and the back of your legs touches the chair. If your hands are resting on armrests or on a table or on your lap, just become conscious of where your hands are and the feeling that is generated by the pressure of your hands being placed somewhere like that. And you can do this really anytime. So it's really just being conscious of the points in your body meeting some external object that again happen all the time. And that's the idea, is really that these are things that are always going on around us. And so the idea is just for a minute or a few minutes to just really consciously and non-judgmentally pay attention to those things. Okay, so one of the ways that people can experience mindfulness is through meditation. Again, that's not the primary focus of what we're talking about here, because we're really talking about integrating mindfulness into all things that you're doing. But I do want to talk, I do want to just experience for a couple of minutes a little bit of a meditation so you can really get the sense of how powerful mindfulness can be. So if you're sitting, just sit up kind of straight. If you're lying down, just relax your body. And we're just going to do for 2 minutes, we're going to do a meditation. What that means is you're going to close your eyes and you're going to try to, be comfortable, sit comfortably, but sit kind of up. Don't slouch. If you're sitting, don't slouch. Give you the oxygen, the ability to go in and out of your body freely. And we are going to focus on the breath. So you're going to focus on your nostrils, or you can focus on the chest where the air kind of comes in and out the chest, or you can focus further down on your abdomen where the air comes in and out. Your abdomen usually goes in and out. So just close your eyes for a minute and be silent. And I'm going to play a little bit of music and we're just going to relax. Try to keep your attention on the breath. Feeling it go in and out. If you notice that your mind has lost its focus on the breath and it's no longer mindfully on the breath, just bring it back gently. Feeling the air coming in, feeling the air going out. Maybe bring your awareness now to where your body is meeting the chair or the bed or the couch. See if you can feel your back pressing against something or the back of your legs. If your feet are on the floor, pay attention to where your feet are touching the floor. Okay, and very slowly when you're ready, open your eyes. Notice if you feel more mindful now, if you're feeling more present, if you're feeling like the things that you were thinking about before, that you were worrying about before, that you were maybe ruminating about before, or planning before, or angry about before, see if any of those have kind of been softened. And if you're better able to keep your focus a little bit more on what's happening right now in the moment. So that was a formal meditation. It was actually 3 minutes. And if you were able to notice your breath or notice any of the other points that I was trying to point you to, even for a couple of seconds, then you had a very successful meditation. Nobody, including myself, keeps their mind totally focused the whole time that they're meditating. Your mind wanders, and the whole trick is, do you notice that it wanders, and do you bring it back? So that was a formal meditation, but as I mentioned, I'm a big proponent in bringing mindfulness kind of to your everyday life, your everyday movements. So mindfulness can be done anytime, it can be done anywhere. But I have found that there are some times in some places that are kind of easy reminders when you get in the habit. So the first few times might not be that easy, because as I said, mindfulness is not that easy to get into the habit of. But once you're in the habit of it, there are particular times of day or points that I think are good reminders. Oh yes, I want to be mindful. One of those for me is when I first wake up in the morning. A lot of times I'll wake up, my eyes are still closed. Before I open my eyes, I focus on, am I inhaling? Am I exhaling? And just kind of notice my breath. Obviously, I'm still breathing. I woke up in the morning. I'm happy that I woke up. I'm happy that I'm breathing, but it's really a point of focus that I can just bring my awareness to, am I inhaling or exhaling? Just a few times, and then open my eyes, and then I start my day. That makes my morning begin much more mindfully. I'm able to notice when I'm brushing my teeth, I'm more present. When whatever I'm doing in the morning, having a cup of tea, I'm more present doing those things than I might be if I didn't do that. Just couple seconds of practice as soon as I wake up. For me, I'm a writer. I spend a lot of time at my computer. Every time I sit down at my computer and put my hands on my keyboard, I try to use that. And I say try because I'm not always successful, but I try to use that as a kind of touchstone for mindfulness. So I sit down, I put my hands on my keyboard, and I try to feel the keys under my fingers before I start typing. I just try to use that as a moment to be present. What am I seeing? What am I feeling? What am I thinking? So the minute my fingers hit that keyboard, it's an opportunity for me to remember to try to be more mindful. Another thing all of us do many times a day is eat food, right? So before you take that first bite, the minute you have the spoon in your hand, the fork in your hand, the sandwich in your fingers, whatever it is that you're eating, the minute you are about to take a bite of food, stop and say, can I take this first bite very mindfully? And then you're going to take the first bite, focus on chewing, focus on how it feels in your mouth, focus on how it smells, how the food smells, how it tastes, the sensation, how it makes you feel. If it's something you love eating, that brings up a feeling of joy. Try to just be mindful of that. And if you can chew that first bite very slowly and kind of stretch out that moment, that's really helpful. Jon Kabat-Zinn, who I mentioned before, is a mindfulness teacher. He has an exercise that he recommends that people take one single raisin and put it in your mouth and slowly chew it. I mean, usually raisins we eat by the handful, swallow in a second, right? Slowly chewing one single raisin for as long as you can, mindfully trying to focus on all the sensations of the chewing and the raisin and all of that before you swallow it. And so I'm saying you can try that. It's an interesting exercise, but also any food that you're about to eat, anything that you're about to drink, just take a second beforehand and say, I'm going to try to make this first bite or this first sip something that I'm going to do mindfully. And again, the minute you do one thing mindfully, it just makes the rest of the experience more mindful, even if you stop trying to be focused as much. The other thing is when you're walking anywhere, if you're at the supermarket, if you're walking to your car or to a bus, try to notice the sounds that you hear. Just try to pay attention to, what am I hearing? What I'm out in public, I'm 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 with other people, or I'm around other people. I'm just going to listen to the people, to the noise they make, to the sounds that nature makes, to the sounds the environment makes, and try to use that for a moment, just the conscious, I'm going somewhere, or I am somewhere. As I'm moving, I'm going to try to really be listening. And then the last time where I think it's really easy to try to be mindful is anytime you find yourself waiting. So we do a lot of waiting in our day, right? When you go to a doctor's office, you sit and wait. If you're driving a car, you're waiting at the stop sign. If you're taking public transportation, you're waiting at the stop for the transportation to arrive. There's a lot of waiting. So we're calling someone, we're waiting for them to pick up. So anytime there's waiting happening is a good opportunity to say, am I bringing my awareness? Can I bring my awareness to the present moment right now? Be focused so that I'm using this opportunity to practice mindfulness instead of getting annoyed. Like a lot of times waiting is annoying, right? You're on hold on the phone, you're waiting to talk to somebody, you're waiting, for some agency or organization or doctor's office, like you're on hold. It's easy to kind of get worked up about that, but we're doing the exact opposite. Instead of getting worked up about it, using the opportunity to say, I'm feeling mindful, and that's really making me feel good. That's making me feel powerful. It's making my moment feel really meaningful, instead of kind of like wasted time that waiting can often feel like. So where is your attention now? Have you noticed? What are you thinking? What are you feeling? What are you experiencing? What are you hearing? Periodically, it's good to just kind of remind yourself, am I paying attention? There's an author, Aldous Huxley, famous author from many years ago. He wrote a book, and in the book, a person goes to the islands, and as soon as he gets there, he hears all the mynah birds there saying, attention, attention, attention. And he says, what is this? And it turns out that the islanders have trained the birds to remind them, are you paying attention? Where is your attention? So it's a good opportunity. Anytime you think of it, doesn't have to be at those times or moments that I mentioned, but anytime you think of it, it's good to just ask yourself, where is my attention? Am I letting my thoughts run away to the future? Am I letting my thoughts run away to the past? Or am I really trying to be in the now, in this moment, trying to fully experience the life that's going on right around me? Okay, so I'm going to take your questions, and I'll just remind you that both of these novels, if you like to read fiction, both of these novels are a fun way to learn more about mindfulness and to see how the characters in the novel use mindfulness to help them with difficulties that are going on in their day.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Meryl. I think I'm going to need you to just follow me around all day and ask me where my attention is, because it's so helpful. You don't realize it until, like you said, you ask and you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, I'm like thinking of a million things. So I'll just have to hire you to follow me around.
Or you can hire a mynah bird that's been trained to say, attention, attention.
Exactly. One or the other. We do have some questions, so I'll just, if you don't mind, we can get right to it. And just so you all know, I did put a link to Meryl's books and her website and everything in the chat. So this is a good one, because I actually had the same question. How can you use mindfulness to help process negative emotions? So sometimes, for me personally, sometimes the noise that I hear outside can make me feel irritated. So how do you suggest using mindfulness to kind of process? And that's, one of the many negative emotions, but how would you suggest that?
Right. Excuse me. So exactly what you just said. I'm hearing the noise and it's making me feel irritated. And now I'm noticing that I'm feeling irritated in a non-judgmental way. Remember, that was one of the pieces of the definition. So I'm noticing that irritation is arising. I'm not getting caught up in the irritation, because that's not being mindful. I'm just observing the mindfulness, which is not to say you don't experience that. Something happens and you feel sad. Totally legitimate. And mindfulness is not trying to make you not feel sad. But when you notice the sadness, I'm feeling sad, and maybe I want to sit in this sadness for a while and process it and be in the sadness because something just happened that was really sad, or that was really irritating, or that was really whatever. Being in the emotion really helps you in a healthy way process the emotion more than you would if you just kind of bury it or stuff it or just let it consume your mind or let it take over all your thoughts. So mindfulness, I think, is a really great way to process. And I know we call them negative emotions, and kind of I do too a lot of times, but they're really just emotions, right? Emotions are all on the spectrum from I'm happy to this happened and it's made me miserable. And these are just emotions. And any of those emotions, when we're really present to them, can be processed in a way that's much healthier than just if we let ourselves just get carried away and think about all kinds of things that may or may not happen because of them, or that may or may not, that you may or may not want to do, or you may like, we don't do any of these things, right? Mark Twain said, a lot of miserable things happened to me in my life and none of them ever happened, or what, some of them happened. Some, I don't remember the exact quote, but it's like, yeah, because of our minds, because we think all these terrible things and crazy things. And that's because we're not mindful. We just let our thoughts kind of go crazy.
Yeah, and I had when you said about with meditation, and there's a great question that I'm going to ask in a minute, where with when you're sitting in a meditation, it's impossible to have your brain stop, right? Because I had a teacher that once told me your brain's job is to think.
Right.
So by trying to make it not think, it's not really possible because it's doing its job.
Right.
So that non-judgment,
right? It's just going to make you frustrated because of course you can't stop it.
Right. And it's not really supposed to. Yeah, right. Exactly. So what is the difference between deep breathing and mindful meditation, or is there a difference?
So it's all about where your focus is. So I can say, I'm going to do deep breathing right now. I'm going to start breathing deeply, and I breathe deeply. And as I'm breathing deeply, I'm thinking about other things. As I'm breathing deeply, I'm going to write my grocery list as I'm breathing. So deep breathing is an action, and deep breathing is, breath practices, I think, are great because they can help to calm the mind. But mindfulness is about consciously saying, I'm going to focus my mind. And so if you do deep breathing, because the breath, as we talked about before, the breath is a kind of an easy point of focus. Why? Because we always have it with us. We're always breathing. It's always there. Here it is. Here's my nose, and air is always coming in and out. So anytime that I say, I want to be mindful, I'm going to focus on that. I don't need to say, oh, I don't have this device or this gizmo or this thing so that I can practice mindfulness. No, I always have my breath. And so that's why it's used, historically by many cultures. And that's why it's a lot of times recommended. So I'm going to focus on my breath. So if I'm going to do deep breathing, that's going to help to calm my mind. But it's only going to be mindful if I'm focusing on my deep breathing. And again, during the focus of the deep breathing, the mind may easily wander. And the point of mindfulness is just, can I non-judge, without any judgment, can I bring it back and focus again on my breathing? And every time that happens, you just keep trying to bring it back. The more you practice mindfulness, the earlier you tend to catch yourself. So I remember, when I first started meditating, and I would sit and I would think about one thing that led to another thought, led to a third thought, led to a fourth thought, led to a fifth thought. And by the time I was mindful, I was like, how the heck did I think about that? Because you have to trace it back through so many things that triggered you to think about all these other things. The more you practice mindfulness, the more you notice it when you're earlier in the loss of the focus. But the loss of the focus is part of the practice. It always happens. And it's really just all about, can I notice that I'm not focusing and bring it back to the focus again? And so breath
and I love,
deep breath.
I was going to say, I love that kind of differentiation, because like you said, you can be doing deep breathing, but still thinking of other things. Do you suggest any like breathing exercises? I know I've had people kind of talk about the box breathing, where it's like inhale for 4, hold for 4, release for 4, hold for 4, like that kind of to keep the mind focused if you do have trouble connecting with breath. Is there anything in terms of like breath work specifically that you would recommend?
Well, deep breathing is good. And again, one of the other things that's good about it is that you can do it anywhere at any time, right? So here I am on a crowded bus and I'm deciding to practice mindfulness and do deep breathing. I'm not going to attract attention of people around me because I'm doing like a weird thing. So I like just long, slow inhalations through the nose and then long, slow exhalations also through the nose. And you can hold it in between, or you can make the exhalation longer than the inhalation. But I think, you can just focus on, I'm going to just breathe slowly in and I'm going to breathe slowly out. If you're not sitting on a bus and you don't mind attracting a little attention to yourself, I also like alternate nostril breathing because that does help to kind of balance the mind. And again, when you're focusing in that way on the breath, then when you stop doing it, it does kind of help you focus, gives you kind of a leg up on focusing on whatever you're doing next. And that you do by just kind of making a fist and releasing a couple of fingers. And then you close one nostril and you exhale slowly through the other nostril. And then you inhale slowly through that same nostril that's closed. So it's exhale and then inhale. And then you change to the other nostril using the other finger that's open. And again, you want to do that slowly and with focus, with awareness on the breath as it's going in or out. That's a little bit of more advanced breath practice than just deep breathing, but either and both are fantastic. And the idea of them, again, is to try to keep your mind as much as you can on the breath. And then when you stop doing them and just go back to breathing normally, am I focused more specifically on what's happening around me, what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling, what I'm hearing? And usually you are because of the practice.
Right. That's great. I know that you talked a little bit about the health benefits with mindfulness. So things like, like helping with stress, anxiety, weight loss, if you do have mindless eating, that kind of thing. Why do you think mindfulness is not often discussed in medical environments? This person said, I don't think my doctor has ever mentioned it. I don't think mine has either.
No. And it's very unfortunate because doctors aren't trained in what mindfulness is. And so just like the general public, they fall victim to the same thoughts about, myths about what it is or beliefs about what it is or isn't. They don't know how to explain it to a patient. And so doctors just fall back on what their training is, which tends to be drugs and surgery. And that's not anything negative on a doctor. My husband had an accident in the house not that long ago and he needed stitches, and thank God there were doctors trained in that because I am not. But doctors just really don't know about practices like mindfulness, which is why I wanted to point out that the National Institutes of Health is the one that said those things. These are not, weird people making these kinds of assessments. This is the National Institutes of Health evaluating the science and determining that mindfulness is very helpful for these conditions. But most doctors just aren't trained in that, and so they don't know that. And I'm sure if that person went back to their doctor and said, I've been practicing mindfulness and now my blood pressure is lower, the doctor might say that's interesting, but it's still not something they know. It's still not something that they're familiar with. So it's not going to make them tell the next person that they should do it, which is unfortunate because the medical community probably, it would be better if there was a way to educate doctors on these other types of practices. But
yeah, and especially because, a whole mix of things can work for different people. It's almost like integrating all of it together will just be more helpful. That's what I would think.
Yeah. But the mind
amazing.
the mind is a very powerful healer, right? I mean, the reason why pain, I thought that was interesting. I wrote an article for National Geographic not that long ago, looking at how powerful the mind is when it comes to pain, which is not the same as doctors telling people that pain is all in your head and you're not really experiencing it, which happens as well. Unfortunately, people get gaslit, for their pain. But the pain circuits in the brain can get out of whack. And it makes the person feel pain when there's not an injury or something physical that really should be giving them pain. And a practice like mindfulness or other types of mind-body kind of work is very effective at kind of rewiring those circuits in the brain. So the person's no longer feeling that pain. Other pain, yes, if you injure yourself and you have a lingering, pain from an injury or from arthritis or from something, yes, that's harder. Although even then, mindfulness can help you manage that pain better. But these practices are proven in a lot of research, and it's very interesting. And it would be great if more doctors would talk about it.
And also from a patient standpoint, mindfulness makes you more aware of your own body. And, you have to be your own advocate when you're going to any doctor. And so the more that you understand your body and how you're feeling, the more you can kind of explain what's going on or how you're feeling. So it's almost like it can help you as the patient as well kind of understand your body a little bit more if you're mindful of what's happening.
Right.
Okay, what's the next one? Okay, so the alternate breathing that you were doing, someone asked, is it safe to do that breathing in a bus or in a place where the quality of air is not great? Which New York, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
everywhere, but I'm curious. Yeah, I'm curious what you think about that.
It's unfortunate if anywhere you are, the air is not great, but you're going to be breathing anyway. So you're going to be taking in that air, whether you're doing it consciously and mindfully, or whether you're doing it alternatingly or just regularly. You're slowing down your breath when you do these practices. So in that way, you're probably taking in less air than you would if you were just breathing normally. But these are not like, there are some yoga breaths that are rapid inhalations and rapid exhalations, and those you would be taking in more air. But these are the opposite. These are slow and calming. And yeah, if you're on the bus, you can even sit there and go like this. But I was just trying to point out with the other practice that you can do deep focused breathing, bringing your mind to the breath, and no one around you knows that you're doing it. So, sometimes when you're in some situations, that's what you want.
Yeah, and I don't, I mean, I'm not a doctor, but I do think that there is there's a natural filtration system in your nose as well. So breathing, I think there's a book about nose breathing specifically, and how there's a lot of cleansing if you breathe through the nose and out the mouth. So, I mean, quality of air in the city is one thing, but our noses are pretty great at filtration. So
But
hopefully,
from a mindfulness perspective, I'm more of a proponent of breathing in the nose and out the nose, because I think it's easier to focus on one thing. And I think if they make the breath more complicated, I'm breathing in and I'm breathing out my mouth and I'm breathing in my nose again and out my mouth again. It's harder to focus on that. And the idea of focus is really, what's the simplest thing that I can focus on with part of my attention, so that the other part of my attention becomes more present. That's really the purpose of this. And so if you're breathing in through the nose and out through the nose and in through the nose and out through the nose, it's easier to do that.
all right, I think we have one last question, and then we're going to hand it off to Kiara, who's going to talk about circle of care. I think this is a great question to end on. How long do you think it takes to feel the positive impacts of mindfulness?
So the first time you do mindfulness, you will feel the positive impacts. It's not something that takes a long time until you notice, wow, that was good. I had a better experience doing whatever I was just doing because I was mindful doing it. So your life will be enhanced immediately the first time that you really try to. If you eat something mindfully, you will enjoy it so much more than if you eat it without being mindful. So then you say, wow, that lunch was so much better than it would be otherwise. But in terms of if you're trying to impact your blood pressure, if you're trying to impact pain or something that's more long-standing, you're probably going to have to do mindfulness regularly for a period of probably a few months before you're going to really notice any kind of shift. So it's just about starting, and it's just about doing, and it's just about continuing and not judging when you don't do it. So one last time, where's your attention? Do you notice that you're thinking extraneous thoughts and having worry or other emotions that aren't serving you right now? And if so, just gently bring yourself back to the present moment while you listen to Kiara talk about the next thing that she's going to be discussing.
Thank you so much, Meryl. I feel better already. I'm ready to take on my week. Anybody who has any questions, Meryl, I put all of her info, her website, her books, everything in the chat. This video will also be up on YouTube probably later this week. And Meryl, thank you so much. This was really lovely, and I think we can all, have our coffee with a little more mindfulness today. I think we could all do that for sure.
Coffee tastes better when you drink it mindfully.
It does. I love it. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Chiara, who's going to talk about Circle of Care. Hi, thanks so much for being.
Hi, thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Chiara Soto. I am the intake care consultant at PSS Circle of Care, and we are a caregiver program that offers free supportive services to caregivers who are caring for a loved one who is chronically ill, suffering from memory loss or dementia. And these services include counseling, support groups, educational trainings, advocacy, information, referrals, respite care, which is temporary home care. And we also assist with long-term care planning. So if you're interested in receiving more information on our program or our services, you can give us a call at 866-665-1713, or you can also visit our website at pssusa.org. Thank you for your time, and I will also be placing our information in the chat box.
Amazing, thank you. If anybody has any questions, we have a few more minutes while I wait I'm gonna have Chiara put in all the info. If anybody has any questions off the top of their head right now, feel free to type it in. But like Chiara said, we have a hotline you can call, and we have the website that has a little bit more information about the offering. But yeah, I just want to make sure people have time if they want to chat or ask any questions. Amazing, thank you. Yeah, it's a great program. All right, I think, give it one more minute. If you have to jump, thank you so much for being here. We have some great stuff lined up for February, working on March. Can't wait. I think, okay, I'll give it a few more minutes. Chiara, is that hotline available 24/7, or is it just certain hours?
Yeah, so it's Monday through
Sorry
Friday.
if you said that.
Yeah, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And I'll also just make a note of that on the chat box. Thank you.
Great. No, of course. Amazing. All right. I don't think anyone has any questions. Last call. Again, there's people available if you do think of any questions, or if you want to pass on the info to anybody you know who might have questions. It's a great resource available to you all. So amazing. All right. I think we're good. All right. Thank you all so much for being here. Chiara, thank you so much for sharing that information. Meryl, amazing. Thank you so much again for taking the time to chat with us. And I will hopefully see you all on the next one.